we even do more work on global issues than on purely environmental stuff. We started to work with the pension fund, which was called the Oil Fund in 1997. That was when the first money came into the fund. And I think Monsanto was one of the first companies that we commented on. We have a news service called Norwatch, which is a department in The Future in Our Hands. And they started to look after which companies we were invested in. We started to make a claim that we needed ethical guidelines. That was in 98, 99. We didn't know what they would look like, but when it came into action, and with the Graver report, I think things happened very quickly. Actually, we thought it would take more like 3 or 4 years more before we had the principal victory that actually we had ethical guidelines. And that was the first, that was never before we had people say that we can, economy is not isolated from social and environmental issues. And that was very important because, I mean, if you talk to a financial manager or economists, they would always say that it's not possible to mix these things. But that happened with this victory. We claim that since they were adopted, we have been working to make them better every year. And many things have happened. The active ownership, which is run by the NBM, Norwegian Bank Investment Management, was not very much happened the first years. I think Hans Petter Grava, he was in the newspaper every month saying that nothing is happening, what are you doing? And finally something came up. But when it comes to transparency, it's not good enough. You can go to the AP fund in Sweden, and they will publish all the companies they are in dialogue with all the time. Which issues are we taking up with the company? You will find that in the yearly report from the AP funds in Sweden. Just have a Google search and you'll find it. And that's very transparent. And the Norwegian Bank, Norges Bank, they don't do that at all. We wanted to have positive screening for climate investments, and last year that was adopted by the Storting, and it's being introduced this year. I think it's about 7 or 8 billion Norwegian kroner who are put into companies that work with climate. In 2004, tobacco was not excluded. And that's a very important case for we who are here today, I think, because now it's adopted. All tobacco companies are excluded from the fund. That happened last autumn. And Norwatch and Future in Our Hands, we worked with that for a long time. We documented which companies we were talking about, how many Norwegian kroner that was invested in tobacco, and also documenting that it was increasing year by year. We made a media talk about all the problems that they caused in the tobacco sector. And of course, I think we did, our work definitely helped, but it also helped a lot that we had an international convention regarding tobacco industry. So, talking about Monsanto, the issue of child labor is of course important, but if Monsanto is excluded because of child labor, I'm not quite sure if that will have any, will it have any impact on the wider record of Monsanto in the GMO sector and all the other criticism towards the company. I'm not quite sure. I don't think that is necessarily going to happen if Norway exclude them because of child labor, because it will be documented and it will be, everything will be on the web page. Many other funds will sell out, but still the issue will be child labor, and they can go on with all the other things they do. So I think the real thing would be to have a strategy for having Monsanto excluded because of the GMO. There should be 2 ways of doing it. The one is exclusion, which was mentioned by Hans Petter Grava, that if you prove that there is an unacceptable risk that the company contributes to severe environmental damage, We have to document that and say that that's why we have to exclude them. I think the problem with that would be it's not on the basis that what their core idea of selling GMO. That's not the problem. The problem is how they do it. That will be the problem with proving why we should exclude Monsanto because of the exclusion mandate in the ethical guidelines. So the real good thing would be to have negative screening, that is exclude an industry called the GMO business. Like we have excluded weapons, like cluster bombs and nuclear arms. And also tobacco. I want to say a bit more about tobacco and GMOs because there are some very interesting parallels. Tobacco is permitted in Norway. We can smoke it. Okay, that's okay. We can import it. We can sell it. We can't produce it, but that's because we don't have ecological possibilities of doing that. They do it in France, heavily subsidized, by the way. The GMO sector and the tobacco industry has a lot of child labor. They have very bad working conditions. They have a long story with pesticides and the use of stuff like that, which is chemicals, which is not good. They have a lot of propaganda. There is a question about health risk, both for the users of the product and for the people who work with the product. So I think that should be, we should go on and document all the problems with the GMO companies, make sure that the press is writing about it. The good thing, if we exclude them, then there will be documentation on the webpage of Norges Bank and the Ministry of Finance. There will be other funds, about 30 at the moment, who will follow the same exclusion. And we can do other international, working on international convention on the GMO sector. So I think what we should do is to campaign to make the GMO the new tobacco of the pension fund. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeanette Bergen, and I am representing KLP. That's one of the true pension funds of Norway, one of the biggest. We are managing the pensions for the state health enterprises and the local government in Norway. As a responsible investor and owner in companies, we are obviously concerned with cases like Monsanto and companies like Monsanto and the issues raised here today. We did actually exclude Monsanto in 2006 because of its severe PCB contamination in UK. We worked in dialogue with the company, even though we excluded them and sold our shares. We had a dialogue, and they were responsive to the case, and we re-included the company in our investments in 2009 as a result of their positive contribution and the fact that the UK government verified that they were very proactive and they were taking responsibility for their PCB spills in the UK. So that was another side of what kind of problems they've had before, because of course the PCB contamination was in the 50s and 60s. So it's part of the Monsanto history when it was a chemical company. But in terms of our policy on investments, we are very much following the Norwegian Government Pension Fund. Our policy are very much looking the same as theirs. We are following their exclusion, like Arild said here. And I'm also supporting